He laughed loudly in front of his friends, loudly, cruelly, confidently. She still can't get even a low-level job, he sneered, clinking glasses of vintage scotch with the other men in our pristine marble living room. 5 senior executives, all dressed in sharp suits, all senior Viridian Dynamics, all handpicked by I. And Lucas Bennett, my husband of 8 years, their VP of operations, led the chorus of derision. What none of them know is that I, Ava Sinclair, owned by Viridian Dynamics. I built it from the ground up more than a decade ago, rising from the ashes of my father's small business that collapsed under corporate predation. This company was my revenge, my redemption, and the next morning it would become my battlefield. Remember when she tried to interview at Altera? Lucas Bennett continued, loosening his designer tie. I wish I had seen that train wreck. I smiled inside. That interview was actually my quarterly performance check, cleverly disguised through layers of corporate and private employment agency. They think they are running the show. Little did they know they were dancing in the palm of my hand. The art on the walls, the imported Italian furniture, even the scotch that Lucas Bennett proudly poured, all were purchased with company money. My company. When I first met Lucas Bennett at a charity gala, I pretended to be a struggling freelancer. I drive a modest sedan, live in a small apartment, and dress like I'm shopping at a customs clearance counter. After 3 toxic relationships with men who loved my success until it threatened them, I needed to see what Lucas Bennett really was. In the early days he was very sweet. Support. You will find your place, he said. But marriage revealed his true nature. When he moved in mine home, arrogance creeps in. Sympathy becomes condescending. Maybe you should apply at the coffee shop down the street, he called, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I heard they're hiring bartenders. I forced a shy, embarrassed smile, just the kind he expected from his unsuccessful wife. Then I quietly excused myself and went upstairs. In my private office, I unlocked the hidden wall panel and snuck behind the steel door into my security office. 3 screens lit up, each tracking a different area of Altera's global operations. This is not just a company. It's a digital fortress. My heritage, and tomorrow it will become my calculation. A text message rang out on my encrypted phone. The final document is here. The council has been briefed. Tomorrow's meeting confirmed. It's from Paige Langston, my most trusted moderator. One of the few people who know me more than just Mrs. Sinclair. I'm the CEO they've never seen. I looked at the man mocking me for not having a job. The man whose office I paid rent to. The same person I'm about to fire. And I smiled. Tomorrow everything will change. Not with drama. Not with screaming. But with the quiet power of the truth is revealed. And the sweetest revenge is carried out with absolute precision. The board always calls me Camille Preston, the elusive founder, who only appeared via encrypted calls, never met in person. But tomorrow that will change. They will meet me not as a virtual CEO but in person, Leo Whitaker's unemployed wife, the woman they had unintentionally dismissed. My fingers grazed the edge of the contract termination papers neatly stacked on the desk. Each document is ironclad. Every signature, prepared for every member of Leo Whitaker's complacent drinking crew. The legal team looked at everything. My plan is very discreet. A crash sounded from downstairs. Laughter followed. Once upon a time, the sound of breaking glass in my house could arouse rage. Currently, just another log on the fire. Using company assets inappropriately for personal entertainment purposes. Carefully noted and recorded. More evidence. More leverage. I closed my eyes, the hum of the computer console annoying me. Tomorrow there will be a change. But tonight I allow myself to breathe. A moment of silence before the storm. I thought of my father's voice, steady and patient. Success is not about making noise but knowing when to act. He will be proud of what I am about to do. Outside from my bedroom window, I watched Leo Whitaker and his friends crash into black cars, unaware that their own driver, my employee, was recording every careless movement with a dashboard camera. I smiled, changed into the simple pajamas I'd worn for years, and fell asleep, dreaming of the apocalypse to come. At 6:30 a.m., I sneaked into the building through the service gate. My tailored power suit was replaced with a navy blazer and simple ponytail. Natalie Cross, interview candidates. Today I'm not a CEO. I'm just another woman desperate to give it a try. Paige Langston, my most trusted operator, met me in the basement security office. "Everything is ready," she whispered and handed me the visiting card. "The interview is at 9 a.m. Brandon Wells will distract Leo Whitaker and his team." I gave her a small nod and took my seat in the hallway an hour early. I clutched a printed copy of Viridian Dynamics' annual report, a report I had written under a pseudonym. As the staff passed me, no one glanced at me twice. Just another hopeful face. At 8:45 I saw Leo Whitaker. He strutted past me, not even noticing his wife sitting 5 feet away in disguise. He looked smug, confident, arrogant. He didn't know what was going to happen. "Miss Cross." The HR representative, Kyle Everett, showed up immediately. I remember his profile: competent, well-intentioned but always eager to please the wrong people. "Please follow me." The elevator ride was filled with the kind of shallow, polite conversation that I adopted into company culture years ago. "We're having nice weather. Traffic isn't too bad." I smiled and nodded. As we walked through the open-plan office I had designed myself, every chair, every desk arrangement, every deliberately chosen subdued color palette, I could see Leo Whitaker's team in their morning meeting, seemingly boasting about another great decision. They were celebrating promotions, completely unaware that they were headed for mass layoffs. Kyle Everett leads me into a modest conference room. "We'll start with a brief evaluation, followed by an interview," he explained, his tone carrying a quiet condescension reserved for the women they had decided not to hire. I took the test. It's so simple it's insulting. I intentionally answered a few questions wrong, fumbling just enough to appear nervous. I needed to see firsthand how they treated those they deemed less than. Through the glass I could see Caleb walking by again. He did a double take and smirked. A moment later, the interviewer's phone rang simultaneously. I don't have to look up. I already know what the text says. My husband laughed again at my supposed desperation. The interview that followed was a parade of insight and complacency. But I wasn't confused. "I'm recording. Any violations? Any violation of policy? Every word is ammunition." When the conversation ended, Kyle Everett quickly said, "We'll be in touch," before escorting me out as a favor. But as I entered the hallway, I heard Caleb's voice from around the corner. "There's no way that's your wife, man. Desperation doesn't even cover that." I walked away silent, because I know something they don't know. In less than an hour, I will stand in the boardroom bearing my true name, my true power, and every last one of them will find out exactly who they were laughing at. And more importantly, who is nearing the end of their career. The group's interview is a performance, and Vivian Harper is ready. Disguised as Rachel Delgado, she sits across from 3 smug middle managers at the company she built from scratch. They don't know her face. They don't have to. Their expressions were filled with condescension. Skills assessment? Funny. Some basic coding problem she could complete blindfolded. But Vivian made calculated missteps, pausing too long, choosing a less effective solution, leading them to assume she was just a stressed woman desperate for work. Through the glass partition she saw her husband, Nathan Drake, surrounded by his group of friends, smirking and whispering. He saw her enter. He didn't recognize her. The disguise, a Navy Department store suit and gloomy eyes, worked. He pulled out his phone. A moment later, all 3 interviewers were giggling as their phones rang. No doubt he was mocking her latest embarrassing job search. One interviewer barely looked up from his phone. "It's been a while since you changed jobs. What makes you think you're qualified to work for Stratwell Systems?" Vivian kept her voice gentle, her voice trembling just enough. "It's a tough market," she whispered. "But I'm passionate. I'm a hard worker." They chased her away with faint smiles and insincere platitudes. "We will be in touch." Vivian nodded, clutching her tote bag, concealing her true identity and the text she had just sent from Paige Langston, her trusted executive assistant. The board of directors was seated. The law is ready. Security on duty. As she walked into the bathroom, she could hear Nathan around the corner. "There's no way that's your wife, man. She looks like she's been shopping at Target." The same laughter she had heard for years. Cruelty disguised with humor. Inside the last stall of the bathroom, Vivian opened the hidden bag of clothes that Paige Langston had placed hours earlier. Out came the armor. A tailored charcoal Chanel suit, Louboutin heels, and her actual CEO badge, which until now she had never worn publicly. She transformed in front of the mirror. Her mother's pearl necklace hangs around her neck, a symbol of quiet strength passed down from a woman who successfully taught her not to scream. It waits, it watches, and when it roars it flattens mountains. She emerged from the restroom no longer as Rachel, but as Vivian Harper, founder and CEO of Stratwell Systems. As she walked down the hallway, the staff stopped mid-sentence, eyes wide with both recognition and disbelief. The nervous candidate from before was now radiating undeniable power. Let them stare. Her heels clicked as she entered the private elevator, the one her husband had always assumed was for some mysterious executive. Now he will know who it always belonged to. Vivian hasn't come to the meeting room yet. She turned, heading towards the executive conference room, where Nathan and his friends were joking and drinking coffee. She stopped outside, listening one last time to their arrogance. Does she really think she can work here? One of them laughed loudly. Next, she will be CEO. She pushed the door in. The room fell silent. Actually, she said, her voice calm and clear, I came here to personally deliver the results of that interview. Nathan choked on his coffee. Vivian? Who the hell are you? Vivian Harper, she interrupted, stepping forward. Founder. Ew. Your boss. The room was spinning. Chair scratches the floor. Confusion turned into fear. Vivian dropped a stack of documents on the table. Company rules, personnel reports, surveillance footage, and signed evidence of every unethical action they had taken. She then sent a text message from her phone. Every screen lit up with video evidence. Jokes, dismissive comments, inappropriate behavior, all recorded in high definition. I built this company. You thought I was below you. But today you know the truth. Security stepped forward. You are all terminated. Effective immediately. Nathan stumbled forward, stuttering. I can't. This is a mistake. You're my husband. No, she said firmly, taking off her wedding ring and placing it on the table. You are a lesson. I will not repeat. Vivian turned and walked away, leaving a room full of stunned men in her wake. In the elevator, she did not cry. She didn't even smile. She just breathed for the first time fully and freely. Because this isn't just about revenge. Whispers had begun to spread throughout the building like wildfire. As I took the private elevator, the one Connor had always wondered about but never dared to use, I felt the weight of what was about to happen. Paige Langston's text message arrived just as the elevator opened. Members of the board of directors sit. On-site security. Connor and his team are still holding press conferences. Everything has been arranged. But before I walked into the boardroom to reveal myself as CEO, I had to stop one more time. I turned left, heading towards the executive conference room, where Connor and his closest allies were busy enjoying their latest victory, completely unaware that their empire was seconds away from collapse. I stopped just outside the door, careless to leave it ajar, and listened to their voices, as smug and unfiltered as ever. You should have seen her face in the interview, Connor said with a laugh. My wife thought she had a chance here. What's next? CEO. Laughter rang out. Remember when she tried to speak out about the Barrett account? Derek Lawson from marketing added. At your birthday party, no less. Yeah, another person chimed in. Told us how to structure our client strategy as if she knew everything about this business. The irony made my stomach turn. Barrett's strategy? It's mine, carefully crafted and delivered via proxy. It saved the company millions of dollars and secured 3 major customers. And here they are, mocking it as a silly statement. Connor chuckled. Should we let her down easily or let HR handle the rejection? That's my suggestion. I stepped into the doorway, casting long shadows on their expensive espressos and smug smiles. Silence fell like a guillotine. Actually, I said, my voice even and commanding, I think I'll handle it myself. Connor's hand stiffened mid-sip, his eyes wide with disbelief. His color drained faster than his coffee. What are you doing here? He stammered, his eyes glancing at my branded suit, my confident posture. Dressed like the CEO of Stratwell Systems? I asked, walking completely into the room. Exactly. Derek Lawson started giggling, then stopped when no one joined in. Even Brandon Wells, my trusted plant, was calmly gathering his things, his lips curled into a knowing smile. This is the restricted floor, Connor said. reaching for the control that had long since slipped away. Security will. They're here, I interrupted, gesturing behind me. 2 security guards stood next to the door, silent but alert. Though not for the reason you think. I pulled out my phone and tapped once. Every screen in the room lit up, displaying the company's original founding documents, my name, my photo, my signature. Elena Monroe, I announced. Founder and CEO of Stratwell Systems. Or as you know me, Connor's unemployed wife. Connor's expression disappeared completely. He looked between me and the documents, panic rising. This is impossible, he whispered. What is it, Connor? I said calmly. Just your wife. Just someone you laugh at for not having a job while wearing a watch my company paid for. I walked to the head of the table, my table, and sat down. Tell me, gentlemen, how does it feel to realize you're mocking your own boss? Derek Lawson suddenly stood up, knocking over his chair. I should go. Sit down, I ordered. The strength in my voice left no room for argument. None of you are going anywhere. Not yet. I pressed another button. The screen changed again, now showing a timeline of damning evidence, security footage, internal emails, expense reports, and audio recordings of their most egregious behavior. Everything is meticulously recorded. You have spent years creating a toxic culture, I said, looking each of them in the eye. And now it's over. They sat motionless, their arrogance evaporating, replaced by disbelief. Connor tried to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, they truly saw me. Not as the woman they had dismissed, but as the cause of their downfall. The show had just begun. Every screen in the room lit up and silence hit like a wave. Security footage. Email subject. Recording. Every joke. Every insult. Every brutal moment they thought was whispered in private now plays out in high definition before their eyes. I watched them squirm, arms crossed, their voices monotonous. An interesting management style you have fostered, I said. A culture of bullying, discrimination, and harassment. You think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't care how you treat those you consider below you? Elise Hawthorne, honey, Connor began, his voice shifting to the sweet tone he had used countless times to lure him out of trouble. We can explain. I raised my hand. Oh, you've explained enough, I interrupted. In fact, you've been explaining for years. At every dinner party, every company soiree, every holiday party, you've made your personality clear. I slowly stood up, smoothing the front of my dark gray dress. The board is standing by to formalize what you have achieved on your own. Immediate dismissal for cause. I let my eyes meet each of them, Derek Lawson, Marcus Hale, Theo, and saved Connor for last. And I really should thank you. You made this decision incredibly easy. I can't do this, Connor said, standing up, his voice shaking. I am your husband. I walked to the edge of the table, gently took off my wedding ring, and placed it in front of him like a period at the end of a sentence. As of this morning, I said softly, I'm just your CEO. And you're fired. Security moved forward without saying a word. Behind me, I could hear the panic going on, protests, threats, desperate whispers, but I didn't look back. I have to run a company. The board meeting took place quickly after that. 12 pairs of silent, shocked eyes looked at me signing the contract termination papers. Their expressions were a mixture of admiration and disbelief. They finally saw the elusive founder in the flesh, me, Elise Carrington, and not Connor Blakewell's so-called unemployed wife. After the vote was formalized, I returned to the room on the top floor, which for years had been the source of endless rumors. Paige Langston was already inside, tablet in hand. Their access has been revoked, she confirmed, scrolling through the security log. All accounts are frozen. Legal has sent a cease and desist order to prevent retaliation. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down. 20 floors below, Connor and his so-called friends were being escorted to their waiting cars, stumbling in shock. Even from that distance, I could still see the panic in their posture. What about the house? I asked, thinking of the house Connor always bragged about paying for. Security is here, Paige Langston replied. The locks have been changed. Your personal belongings are in the penthouse. As for Connor's, they'll be delivered to his mother's house before sunset. I smiled faintly, remembering the smug look on his mother's face every time she reminded me that I was lucky to have him supporting my little dreams. Irony will land hard. Divorce papers? I asked. Submitted this morning, Paige Langston said. The pre-agreement you asked him to sign was discreet. He thought he was protecting himself from a gold digger. Turns out, he gave up all claims to your empire. A notification pinged on my screen. Connor had begun damage control, posting vague messages about strategic differences with Stratwell Systems leadership. His LinkedIn still lists him as vice president, I muttered. Not anymore, Paige Langston said, her finger moving quickly across the tablet. I sat down at my desk, my real desk, not the one hidden behind the facade of a helpless spouse. I opened the folder labeled Second Stage of Prevention. Connor and his crew are no fools. Wounded pride has a way of turning into revenge. But I'm not afraid. I have been 10 steps ahead for many years. And I'm just getting started. Non-compete agreements have been activated. None of them have been able to work in the tech industry for at least 3 years. And just to be sure, we informed every major competitor of the reasons behind their termination. No reputable company dares to touch them. I sat in my office and watched footage from their exit interviews, each a masterpiece of denial, panic, and unraveling. Ryan Caldwell still clings to his delusion, threatening to expose me. Justin Hayes burst into tears when he realized his stock options were worthless. Others turned to begging and rage. Meanwhile, Brandon Wells, my go-to plant, has assembled transition teams to keep our operations intact. Nothing important will be affected. We should test everything they've been exposed to in the past year, Paige Langston, my chief of staff, suggested. About 3 years, I said firmly, remembering all the half-hearted boasts about creative accounting, and flag any customers with whom they have personal contact. My phone rang. Another call from Ryan Caldwell, this time from his personal number. I rejected it without hesitation. Just one more name on the growing list of blocked contacts. His friends are also trying to reach out, perhaps hoping to strike some sort of deal or backdoor deal. Should we issue a company-wide statement? Paige Langston asked, her tone cautious. I thought for a moment. By this time the news had spread. The entire building was abuzz with the revelation that the woman Ryan Caldwell once derided as unemployed had been the long-elusive CEO. Murmurs and gasps were heard in every hallway. It was only a matter of time before the rumors turned into wild theories. Let's schedule a general meeting tomorrow morning, I said. It's time for them to meet their real CEO. Not the version that Ryan Caldwell invented. A soft ping drew my eyes back to the screen. Security footage shows Ryan Caldwell at his mother's house, standing among boxes of his belongings. Her face turned from confusion to disbelief as he recounted the day's events. Company car? Still in our parking garage. Security was waiting to retrieve it. What about the house? I asked, my voice calm. Paige Langston nodded slightly. The locks are being changed as we speak. His things are in the penthouse. His will be delivered to his mother this evening. I can't help but smirk as I remember the times Ryan Caldwell bragged to his mother about supporting me through career difficulties. The irony is now almost poetic. And the divorce papers? I added. Submitted this morning. The contract agreement you asked him to sign, absolutely solid. He thought it was for his own protection. Never realized he was signing any claim to your property. Another red flag appears. Ryan Caldwell posted a vague message on LinkedIn, citing strategic differences with Stratwell Systems. I watched as Paige Langston's PR team responded with our official statement. A clear and confident statement affirming our zero-tolerance stance on harassment and abuse of power in the workplace. His resume still says Executive Vice President, I noted. Not anymore, Paige Langston said, her fingers hovering over her tablet. I turned back to the pile of documents on my desk, the organizational chart, the legal review, the restructuring plan. It was time to rebuild not only the company's leadership, but also its culture from the ground up. One more thing, Paige Langston said, her voice softening. The charity gala next month, where you meet him. Cancel my answer, I said without hesitation, but double the corporate donation. Anonymous. The afternoon passed in a blur: meetings, press releases, transition plans. Through the surveillance feed, I see Ryan Caldwell's office is packed. His name tag has been removed. His coveted parking spot was reassigned. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Paige Langston returned with her final report. They are all on leave now. Security is monitoring their devices. There has been no unusual activity. They're still in shock, I said, leaning back in my chair. Give them a day, then the anger will come. She nodded. Is it worth it? I looked out the window, thinking about the years I had endured, the smirks, the side comments, the firings. Watching Ryan Caldwell and his friends crush people's careers is like a sport. Meanwhile, I still think of myself as a quiet, clueless and helpless wife. Ask me again in a week, I said with a small smile. But now? There's still work to do. Within 12 hours of termination, the fallout began as expected. Each former director made predictable moves. Derek Lawson, ever the opportunist, attempted to download a secret client list before his access was revoked. Luckily, Brandon Wells, my trusted powerhouse in a senior management position, documented every effort. Their severance package? Of course it's useless. The legal team has more than enough evidence of wrongdoing to ensure none of them walk away with too much money. Connor tried to access his investment account in the middle of the night, Paige Langston said, scrolling through the digital diary on her tablet. He seemed surprised that his stock options were worth nothing. I smiled. I recall the times he bragged about those stocks at dinners, calling them his security net. Too bad he never read the fine print in the misconduct clause, especially the part one added myself. What about the others? I asked. Paige Langston replied. 2 of them contacted competitors. They clearly violated the non-compete agreement. And Connor's mother, she's very vocal on social media, claims you betrayed him. I pulled up the feed. But the story doesn't turn out as Connor expected. Instead, it was reclaimed by the truth. Former employees have come forward, now brave enough, to share stories of harassment, discrimination and bullying under Connor's leadership. Every post confirms what I've done. This isn't just revenge. That's justice. It's time to take the next step, I said and pulled out an email I drafted the night before. With just one click, I sent personal invitations to private meetings with every employee who had ever reported to Connor and his toxic inner circle. That should cause some anxiety, Paige Langston commented. Good, I said, standing up and smoothing out my Armani dress. I want them unbalanced. And have security search Connor's office again. Check for hidden documents or unapproved devices. The morning played out like a perfect game of chess. While Connor and his allies may be nursing their wounded egos and plotting revenge, we are quietly destroying their entire legacy piece by piece. At 9:45 a.m., I stood in front of the mirror in my ensuite, adjusting the final details. The timid woman Connor once joked about was gone. In her place is a leader, calm, focused, and dressed in a steel gray power suit, speaking without saying a word. The auditorium was packed, Paige Langston reported. Everyone is waiting. I nodded, gathering my thoughts. Start recording. The all-hands meeting was recorded for legal reasons, yes, but also for historical reasons. This is the moment everything changes. When I stepped on stage, the silent whispers disappeared. Silence spread across the room like a wave. Good morning, I began, my voice even. I am Alexandra Cross, founder and CEO of Stratwell Systems. Some of you may know me as Connor Blakewell's wife. But today and from this moment on, you will know me as your leader. Not a sound. In the front row, the HR team squirmed uncomfortably, perhaps recalling yesterday's interview with the woman they now realize they had been following for a while. Yesterday, we fired 5 executives for cause. I continued. Yes, one of them was my husband. Yes, it was due to documented misconduct, harassment, abuse of power and violation of our core values. I stopped to let it sink in. But today is not about them, it's about us. About moving forward. Over the next hour, I laid out my vision for the company's future. Restoring trust, promoting transparency, and rebuilding a culture where people aren't afraid to speak up. New reporting structures, anonymous feedback channels, and HR will finally do its job. And one more thing, I said as I closed the door. My door is open. Not metaphorically, literally. Starting today, any employee can schedule time with me. No gatekeepers. No filters. The applause started softly but quickly grew into something stronger, matter-of-fact, hopeful. As I walked off the stage, Paige Langston held up her tablet to show me the company's internal chat. It's already lit up. For the first time in a long time, people felt seen. And that's just the beginning. Back in my office, the storm I caused was just starting to spread to every corner of Stratwell Systems. The internal messaging system was still buzzing with applause and questions, but I knew the real work would come later. One by one, I met with Connor's former direct reports. Each meeting brought a dance of reassurance and careful assessment. Who can adapt? Who will resist? Who silently suffered and who created the conditions? Connor called back, Paige Langston said as she walked in between meetings. Turn off the phone this time. He asked for a private conversation. Legal notes, I replied calmly, looking over my notes. And check his mom's social media. She usually posts something before he moves out. By late afternoon, the company's chessboard had changed dramatically. 3 of Connor's most loyal managers resigned because they were unable, or unwilling, to adapt to the new culture. But 2 others gave detailed accounts of past wrongdoing in exchange for pardons. And then the call came. The Barrett family wants to meet the real CEO, Paige Langston announced, her eyes sparkling. I smiled as I remembered Connor scoffing at my ideas about their interpretation, dismissing them without a second glance. Let's schedule it for tomorrow, I said. And send them the presentation Connor gave last month. A moment later, a notification appeared on my screen. Connor had been spotted at a bar with Derek Lawson and 2 other former executives. Paige Langston scans the live surveillance feed. They're plotting something, she whispered. Of course, I replied, readying the contingency plans we had quietly prepared months ago. Let them plot. Every step they take is just more evidence. I stood by the window watching the sunset behind the horizon. Somewhere out there, 5 men who once wielded power like a sword are facing the reality that they have been double-crossed by a woman they believe did not belong in the boardroom. Their game ended yesterday. Mine just started. Tomorrow we start phase 2, I told Paige Langston. Let's see how they like their job search. The next morning found me in the office reviewing footage from the bar. Their slurred words and angry gestures, fueled by fine scotch, gave us everything we needed to strengthen our legal strategy. They're planning to sue, Paige Langston announced, walking in with 2 cups of coffee. I accepted the cup with a knowing smile. Let me see. She gave the latest report. Connor contacted 3 law firms. No one took his case. Each was quietly connected to Stratwell through shell companies, a website I created years ago. He's also reaching out to our biggest customers, added Paige Langston, especially the Barretts. I nodded. Play sound. Connor's voice came through the speakers, full of authority, trying to convince our client that he had been wrongly fired, that I had somehow stolen the company. And Mr. Barrett's answer? I asked. Paige Langston plays the response. Barrett's voice was sharp and decisive. Connor, your wife's proposal last week was amazing. The proposal you rejected. We found out. Don't contact us again. I leaned back, letting that satisfaction settle for a moment. For more than a year we built a watertight case documenting every crime, every abuse of power, every off-the-record meeting. What Connor didn't understand was that I had no control over the company. I have regained my voice, my strength, and my truth. The board wanted updates, noted Paige Langston. They are worried. I nodded. Of course it is. But they don't need to worry. We not only cleaned the house but also rebuilt it from scratch. And I'm ready to take the lead. We were tightening every bolt, reinforcing the walls that Connor and his friends had accidentally punched holes through. The Human Resources Department produced a dense file of complaints that had long been buried by previous management. Emails that had been accidentally deleted were now retrieved. Once silent voices were now coming forward. Former employees began reaching out, relieved that someone was finally listening. They carry receipts. Stories of toxic meetings, unfair firings, and countless women overlooked. Connor's mom is stepping up her social media campaign, Paige Langston reported, her voice dry. She's saying you seduced him in a corporate coup. I laughed loudly and pulled out the prenup that Connor had drafted himself. Send her lawyer a copy. The copy her son insisted I sign to protect his assets from the gold digger wife he thought I was. By midday, our legal team had compiled a clear brief. Every smug comment Connor ever made about manipulating stock options. All comments are noted regarding the elimination of female contestants. Every misuse of company funds, all meticulously documented. Then Paige Langston rushed in after lunch panting. They met someone from Atlas Tech last night. I turned on the security footage and turned up the volume. Connor, drunk and arrogant, was recorded on our planted high-end microphone, offering to share Stratwell's proprietary strategies in exchange for executive positions, for him and his small disqualified club. I stared at the screen for a long while. Send the footage to their lawyers, I said, and the board of CC Atlas Tech. Let's see how loyal they really are. That afternoon's board meeting was a masterclass in strategy. I presented every file, every recording, every email chain. There is no argument. The board's concerns dissipated when they saw how far the corruption had spread. But I'm not done yet. We've been tracking unusual payments through their accounts, I said and opened the last file. The SEC will find this very interesting. At that moment, Paige Langston's tablet buzzed. He's here, she said quietly. Connor convinced lobby security to let him up. I pulled up the live feed. There he was rushing in, face red, clutching a file as if it were a sword. His suit was wrinkled, his gait was slightly unbalanced, clearly fueled by rage and whiskey. Should I stop him? Asked Paige Langston. I shook my head. No. I want him to think he has a chance. A moment later, Connor rushed into the conference room, eyes bewildered, chest heaving with fake victory. I have proof, he shouted, waving his file. She set everything up. It was all a setup. I slowly stood up. Proof that I built this company from the ground up? That I ran it while you took the credit for my work? That I recorded your every moment of corruption, while you mocked me for not having a job? He blinked. The room was silent. I turned to Paige Langston. Show them. Screens around the room lit up, surveillance footage, financial reports, emails, audio recordings. Every ugly joke. Every betrayal. All are exposed. You trapped me, he whispered. No, Connor. You trapped yourself, I said, my voice calm. Every time you mock a capable woman. Every time you mock your wife. You built this up. I gave him two options. Now you can walk out, honor your right not to compete, and retain what's left of your dignity. Or you can fight me and see every detail of your conduct publicly recorded. He opened his mouth, but I had heard enough. Security, I said into the intercom. Please escort Mr. Blakewell out, and this time permanently revoke his access. When the door closed behind him, I turned back to the board. Now, I said, smoothing my skirt and sitting down, about the financial irregularities. That day we not only cleaned the house but also laid the foundation for something better. And I, Camille Prescott, once considered unemployed, have reclaimed everything he thought I couldn't build without him. And more. By the end of the day, every piece of evidence has been cataloged, every statement recorded, every document notarized. We built a case so impenetrable that no law firm would dare side with Connor, even with a 10-foot pole. They will meet again tonight, Paige Langston reported as darkness descended on the city. Same bar. Good, I replied, reviewing the surveillance request we had prepared. Let's see what else they're stupid enough to say. The best cases, I added, are built by letting your enemies believe they're winning, until they lose everything. The footage came out better than we expected. Fueled by expensive whiskey and bruised egos, Connor and his former teammates openly boast about years of corporate misdeeds. Play that again, I told Paige Langston the next morning, leaning forward as Connor's slurred voice filled my office. Remember last year's merger? He said, his words sticky and complacent. What makes us look like geniuses? Let me tell you how we actually did it. What followed was a detailed, unnamed confession of insider trading complete with dates, amounts and strategies. I didn't flinch. Send it to the legal department, I instructed. And report anonymously to the SEC. It's time for Protocol Thunder. Protocol Thunder is the result of many months of planning. A carefully woven net is designed to catch them when they are at their most arrogant. Phase 1, I said. Reveal the merger investigation to the financial press. Make it look as if it's coming from a worried ex-employee. In just a few hours, the headline spread across business news networks. Stratwell Systems has had a minor stock crash. Exactly what we wanted. Predictably, Connor and his friends panicked. They were all on the phone with their brokers, Paige Langston reported. Try to sell off their shares before the consequences spread. I watched live market news as their desperation took shape. Every sale they make puts them in legal jeopardy. Phase 2 release, I said. Then came a public announcement. Stratwell Systems is launching a massive restructuring and expansion plan. Our stock price skyrocketed within minutes. But Connor and his allies? They've already sold it. Loss. Classic insider trading on full display. The Antitrust Commission is calling, Paige Langston said, holding up her tablet. I received the call on speaker. Miss Harper, we have just received some very convincing information about the merger. Yes, I said smoothly. We are conducting our own internal investigation. I'm happy to share my findings, including some very revealing footage of the bar from last night. By noon, the SEC opened an official investigation. The Antitrust Commission began looking into the legality of the merger. Meanwhile, shares continue to rise as investors embrace our vision of a clean and responsible future. Connor tried to leave the country, Paige Langston reported with some amusement. His passport was flagged at the airport. He never even got through security. I smiled. Unfortunate. And the others? Derek Lawson is having trouble in his brokerage office, she said. 2 were working with criminal defense attorneys. 1 was trying to wipe out his email history, not realizing we had archived everything. The afternoon brought more surprises. Our anonymous tips triggered investigations at 3 other companies where Connor and his friends had previously worked. Their rot didn't start here, it only revealed itself here. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, I looked out over the city, thinking about how these men had laughed at me, mocked my ideas, and treated me like an afterthought in my own empire. But now the meeting room belongs to me. The company flourished under new leadership. And the most satisfying part wasn't just that justice was served. It was that every action they took in defiance only tightened the noose they had woven for themselves. This is no longer just about revenge. This is about rewriting the story. And I'm holding a pen. Former colleagues, sensing blood in the water, began coming forward to tell their own stories of wrongdoing. Their lawyer is requesting a meeting, Paige Langston informed me, holding up her tablet. They are offering a settlement. Refused, I replied, eyes glued to the latest breaking news. Let them sweat. By evening, the storm I had created arose. The SEC investigation has now penetrated their personal trading accounts. The Antitrust Commission has frozen its assets pending review. And to top it off, 3 class action lawsuits have been filed by former employees, each alleging years of systemic discrimination. Connor's mother has been silent on social media, Paige Langston noted with some satisfaction. Maybe she saw the insider trading fees, I said. Even she couldn't turn that into a redemption arc. Just then a notification appeared on my screen. Connor was trying to access his frozen account. Every transaction is declined. His desperation was evident through every keystroke. Should we release the bar footage to the press? Asked Paige Langston. Not yet, I said, getting up from my chair and walking to the window. Let's see how they handle it tomorrow first. Because tomorrow is the final phase of Protocol Thunder. While Connor and his friends were trying to manage their shaky reputations and frozen finances, we were quietly buying back their dumped shares through a network of shell companies. And when the markets open, Stratwell Systems will announce a multimillion-dollar government contract. A contract we've been secretly negotiating for nearly a year. Their wives are calling their divorce lawyers, Paige Langston added, glancing at the screen. They clearly weren't happy about losing everything because of their husband's fraud. I thought back to the prenuptial agreement that Connor had insisted on, the agreement that he believed would protect him from so-called gold diggers. The irony? That same document now protects my assets from his destruction. Send them all meeting invitations, I instructed. Tomorrow exactly 9 a.m. They won't show up, Paige Langston predicted. Oh, they will, I said softly, seeing my own reflection in the glass. Because right now, I'm their only chance to survive this. As the city lights flickered outside, I reviewed tomorrow's script one last time. In less than 12 hours, Connor and his once proud colleagues will be sitting across from me, shedding their arrogance, hoping to salvage whatever part of their lives they can. Paige Langston placed 5 visiting cards on my desk. I picked one up, running my thumb over Connor's photo. "Tomorrow," I whispered. They faced the lightning before the thunder. At exactly 9 a.m. they arrived, wrinkled clothes, sunken faces, eyes dark with regret over insomnia. The air around them was thick with fear. I remained calm behind my desk as they filed in. "Gentlemen," I greeted. "I trust you have had an eventful week." Connor couldn't look me in the eye. Derek Lawson looked like he was about to collapse. The others stared at their visitors' passes as if they couldn't believe how far they'd fallen. "The board is waiting," I said and stood up. "Should we?" They followed me, like men on their way to sentencing, to the boardroom. Through the glass walls they could see the entire board assembled. Our legal team is ready, supported by 2 SEC representatives. Before entering, I stopped in the doorway. "I want you to understand something," I said, my voice low but firm. "What happens in the next hour will not only determine your career, but could also determine your freedom." The room was silent when we entered. Paige Langston stands next to the presentation screen. Pens are ready, notebooks are open, and all eyes are on me. "Board members, distinguished guests," I began, taking my seat at the head of the table. "We are here today to address egregious violations that go far beyond poor leadership. We are talking about corruption, abuse, and betrayal of the very values on which this company was built." As I began to speak, it became clear to me. The 5 men realized that the game was over and that the Queen had just taken over the board. Systematic financial misconduct and abuse of power. With a simple nod to Paige Langston, the presentation began. One by one, the screens in the meeting room lit up. Transaction records, surveillance footage, email chains, and voice recordings. All played with startling clarity. It was a curated symphony of betrayal, each strike driving a nail into the coffin of the men sitting before me. "As you can see," I said evenly, not taking my eyes off Connor, who was slumped in his chair, "this goes far beyond workplace harassment. We're looking at securities fraud, insider trading, and criminal conspiracy." The SEC representatives were scribbling furiously, the board's expression as hard as stone. Derek Lawson, who had been the loudest guy in the room in his glory days, now looked like he was about to faint. I stopped, letting the tension breathe out. "Stratwell Systems is willing to offer a limited amnesty," I said. "One time. One offer. No negotiation." 5 heads lifted instinctively, with a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could leave with something intact. Paige Langston handed each person a thick folder. "The conditions are simple," I continued. "You will cooperate fully with all investigations. Disclose any instances of wrongdoing, including those we have not yet discovered. Return all profits earned from irregular transactions. And most importantly, you will publicly admit your actions." Connor finally found his voice, though it cracked under the weight of the moment. "You want us to confess?" "I want you to face the consequences of your choices," I replied calmly. "Sign now," I added, "and we will not pursue criminal charges. Refuse and the SEC will proceed. You've seen the evidence. You already know what happens next." Behind them, their lawyers, ever so smug, were nodding grimly. "They know it too." "I have 5 minutes," I said, glancing at the clock. "After that, the offer disappears." The room echoed with desperate whispers. You can almost hear the sound of egos shattering. One by one, the signatures appeared on the page, some with shaking hands, others in numb surrender. Connor is the last. His hand shook as he scribbled his name, then pushed the file towards me. Our eyes locked. The arrogance is gone. Instead, there was the unmistakable awareness that he had been thoroughly and masterfully outplayed. "Great," I said, gathering the signed documents. "Paige Langston will now escort you to a private room. SEC representatives are ready to take your statement." As they were led away, like people walking into a storm of their own making, I returned to the board. "Now," I said, "let's talk about the future of Stratwell Systems." The next hour was spent laying the foundation for the company's rebirth. A restructuring of executive leadership, new compliance processes, and a review of our corporate governance model. The board of directors had just witnessed how thoroughly I handled the crisis and approved all proposals without hesitation. One more thing, I added before we paused. I want to make it clear that every employee affected by discrimination by previous management will be considered for reinstatement, or be compensated accordingly. They nodded, quickly accepting. After all, the alternative is much more troublesome. Later in my office, Paige Langston returned with the initial deposition reports. They sing like canaries, she said, half amused, half disgusted. Each person tries to save himself by attacking the other. I skimmed through the statements. It's amazing how quickly loyalty evaporates under pressure. Make sure every confession is properly documented and witnessed, I told her. We don't want anyone to change their story later. Through the high window, I saw Connor being escorted to the car. He looked stunned, his career, his reputation, even his marriage falling apart. His lawyer was on the phone, no doubt trying to find a lifeline in the rubble. Their transaction records? I asked. Scrutinized by forensic accountants, Paige Langston replied. We'll soon find out how deep the rabbit hole goes. I nodded slowly, already thinking 3 steps ahead. The empire they tried to usurp is now back in my hands, and the cleanup has just begun. Forensic accountants have completed their preliminary review. Each disgraced executive will have to pay back several $1 million in ill-gotten gains. I returned to my desk when the news broke. Stratwell Systems stock jumped 15% overnight, and business magazines were calling us a new model for corporate accountability. Let's schedule a company-wide meeting tomorrow, I told Paige Langston. It's time to rebuild what they tried to destroy. She stopped in the doorway looking at me. Is it worth it? I didn't answer right away. I thought about the years I had watched Connor and his team crush ambitions, bully subordinates, and fire anyone they considered inferior to them. I remember the careers they derailed, the women silenced, the ideas stolen. Let's ask everyone to get their jobs back, I said. Ask the women who don't have to fear going to work. Ask the ones who think justice will never come. Because true revenge is not just about revenge but also about rebuilding. And we did just that. The days that followed moved like dominoes, toppling everything they had built on lies. Every morning brings revelations, every afternoon brings consequences, every night new victories. Paige Langston walked into my office again one such morning with an update. Connor's criminal defense attorney just quit. Looks like he tried to recant part of his confession. I pulled the video feed from his testimony, Connor's own words, spoken freely, recorded under the watchful eye of his lawyer. Send that clip to the prosecution team, I instructed. And the clip where he was advised of his rights 3 times. Outside our walls, the ripple effect is spreading. 3 other companies where Connor and his friends worked are now conducting internal investigations after recognizing similar malicious patterns. Their once mighty professional network is collapsing as former allies scramble to separate. Derek Lawson tried to commit suicide, Paige Langston said softly, placing a cutout on my desk. I froze. Is he stable? Yes, she nodded. Under observation. I sighed, my feelings were complicated. Make sure his medical bills are paid anonymously, I said. And ask human resources to prioritize evaluating the people he harasses. The media had a field day. Business articles published information about the company's toxicity. Women's magazines sought out features about breaking the glass ceiling. Tech blogs have debated how Phantom CEO orchestrated one of the most radical takedowns in corporate history. Paige Langston released another video, this time of Connor's mom. Once very proud, now tearfully apologizes in an interview for enabling her son's behavior. The segment ended with her announcing a donation to a nonprofit organization aimed at preventing workplace harassment. This morning his wife filed for divorce, Paige Langston added. So did the wives of 3 other people. They all confirmed they knew nothing about the financial fraud. I stood by the window looking out at the city, wondering where Connor could be. Perhaps hiding in his mother's living room, watching his legacy vanish in slow motion. His assets have been frozen. His marriage was over. His future, buried under legal procedures. Reinstatement interviews are going well, Paige Langston said, shifting focus. 12 former employees have accepted offers to return. I smiled as she continued. Lauren Vega, no relation, is among them. The brilliant programmer Connor ran away 2 years ago? She now leads our AI department. My heart lifted. Lauren's talent, once dismissed, is finally appreciated and enhanced. Even Barrett's account, the account where Connor scoffed at my idea, just doubled its contract with us. They were impressed with the transparency, noted Paige Langston. At that moment, a notification popped up on my screen. Another former employee went public with their story, this time from one of Connor's previous employers. The pattern of behavior spanned years. The SEC is expanding the investigation, Paige Langston added. They're going deep. I returned to my desk with the certainty that this is not just the end of their era, but the beginning of something better. The dust is still settling, but I know one thing for sure. This time the right people are rising. And we're not done yet. The consequences are not just professional. They are also social, personal, and irreparable. Camille Prescott sits at her desk, watching everything Connor and his old boys club have built fall apart. The SEC is now investigating every company these disgraceful people have ever touched. Camille opened the secure database they had spent months compiling and told Paige Langston, "Send the investigators everything: emails, documents, audio files, every last bit of wrongdoing." But the collapse has gone beyond boardrooms and stock charts. Their country club memberships were revoked. The positions on the charity board quietly resigned. Their child's private school application was suddenly waitlisted. Their names, once spoken in admiration across the East Coast, are now synonymous with infamy. They're being blackballed, notes Paige Langston, scrolling through whistleblower forums now filled with stories about Connor and his gang. Camille glanced at the latest surveillance photos. Connor looked blank, unshaven, trying to reconnect with old allies, who now seemed too busy to have lunch. Derek Lawson emerged from his therapist's office, clearly devastated. The rest are unraveling in their own desperate ways. Brandon Wells has submitted his final report, Paige Langston added. Since the restructuring, productivity has increased by 40%. It's not just data, it's also energy. Without the toxic weight of Connor and his team, the staff has thrived. Collaboration skyrocketed. Innovation is back. Fear has left the building. However, Paige Langston said, their legal team is back, and is now pleading for lighter penalties in exchange for cooperation. Camille didn't even flinch. It's too late, she said. They had their chance. Actions have consequences. Another message flashed. Connor was trying to email her from a burner account. Like the others, it was immediately archived and flagged as legitimate. What about his personal belongings? She asked. Still in storage. There's no room in his mother's house for his expensive watch collection and his ego, Paige Langston replied. Camille smiled at the irony. The man who once mocked others for driving used cars now understands what true value means. Paige Langston continued. The class action lawsuit is underway. More than 300 former employees have joined. Every day there are new reports of careers derailed, ideas stolen, and dignity trampled. The lawsuit is no longer about revenge. It's about accountability and recognition. The media still requests interviews. They want to know how successful you were, becoming CEO of Phantom while married to him, says Paige Langston. Camille shakes her head. That story will remain her own. Sometimes the person who gets no attention is the one you should fear the most. Schedule the next board meeting, she instructed. Phase 2 of the restructuring begins next week. As Paige Langston left, Camille saw the latest surveillance images, the 5 former Titans now barely knowing who they were. Their downfall was not only swift but complete, because the real justice lay not in the explosion, but in the quiet radioactive aftermath, where nothing toxic could grow again. 6 months after revealing herself as the true CEO of Stratwell Systems, Camille stood by the window watching the autumn leaves swirl above Corporate Square. The final numbers are in, Paige Langston said, walking in with her tablet. Profits are up 60% and employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. The settlement was approved this morning. Camille nodded. Every employee harmed by Connor and his team now received not only compensation but public recognition. It was no longer about revenge. It was about recovery, healing, growth. Camille knew that the best revenge was not the spectacle of collapse, but ensuring the rise of all those men tried to hold back. And now they were rising. Wake up. Connor Whitman, once a polite executive with a penchant for cruel jokes and careless arrogance, now works as a junior sales associate at a small electronics store in Ohio. His mother pulled strings to get him the job, but unsurprisingly he is on probation for attitude problems. The man who once laughed at others for their mediocre careers now struggles to meet basic sales targets. Derek Lawson, one of his closest friends, is still in treatment, but he has taken a step toward redemption, posting a public apology and volunteering for workplace harassment prevention programs. Some might call it growth. I glanced at the frame Business Week covered my desk. It tells the story of Stratwell Systems transformation, celebrating our cultural change without naming the scandal that prompted it. Other men. One was teaching ethics at a local community college, how ironic. Another took a job at his brother-in-law's construction company. The last one moved to Alaska to find himself. Their demise was spectacular, yes, but that's not what I focus on. Instead, my thoughts turn to what happened afterward. Lauren Medina, no relation, currently leads our AI department. She had been kicked out by Connor years ago, ridiculed for ideas he couldn't understand. Now 3 new patents bear her name. Her team is transforming our entire development process. Across Stratwell Systems, previously stuffy departments are buzzing with ideas. Employees who were once overlooked are now leading groundbreaking projects. The toxic ecosystem that Connor and his allies fostered has been replaced with collaboration, innovation, and mutual respect. From Barrett's account, Paige Langston said, grinning and placing a bottle of champagne on my desk, they're doubling the deal. Lauren's team has solved a problem they've been struggling with for years. I smiled, remembering how Connor had once scoffed at Lauren's suggestions. Yet now she was leading the company's most profitable division. Are there any recent attempts at contact? I asked. Paige Langston glanced at her tablet. Connor attempted to contact you on LinkedIn last week. His profile still lists him as VP of Operations. Although anyone searching his name will get a very different story. Indeed, the internet has not forgotten. Every article about harassment, every expose of corporate misconduct, his name is front and center. The documentary crew is reaching out again, Paige Langston added. They're calling it Broken Glass Ceiling. The focus is on business transformation and women in leadership roles. Let's introduce them to real heroes, I said. Lauren Brooks Simmons, Tessa Davenport, women doing the hard work of rebuilding. I sat at the head of the table, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility, but also the relief of vindication. I realized this is not the end of a revenge story. It's the start of something better. Let's talk about the future, I said, purposefully opening my folder. Because that's what's left when the storm clears. Not just the satisfaction of tearing down what's broken, but also the obligation to build something lasting in its place. And I'm ready for both. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming one's identity, rising up from betrayal, and using wisdom to right deep wrongs. Natalie Pierce reminds us that real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, watches, and acts precisely. Whether you are overlooked, undervalued, or dismissed, remember, your value is not determined by others. You can rebuild, lead, and create something better. From the ashes of heartbreak to the foundations of purpose. This is for every woman who has remained silent to protect peace, and every woman who is willing to speak up to defend herself. If this story inspires you, please leave a comment sharing your favorite moments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more powerful stories that celebrate the quiet strength within all of us.